Hello and welcome to another instructional video. I am Jeff.iNcontroL Robinson and I'm really excited to talk about some StarCraft 2 with you guys. We're going to look at a PvT and more specifically the Nexus Forge Fast expansion in the Protoss versus Terran matchup. That might sound a little bit weird to you guys, but of course we've been seeing more of that in the GSL and on the ladder. Let's get into it right now. The map will be Shakuras Plateau. Our opponent today is NRG Coma. A very strong player actually. A lot of people haven't heard of him, I'm sure. He's just a North American Terran from Team Energy, and he's actually really good. I've played him a few times. He's done exceptionally well against me. I really like his style. He's a very fast, aggressive Terran. He'll take a lot of expansions very early, puts you kind of on the back of your heels, and he supplements that by also adding a lot of production so that once he drops those mules, he can go ahead and realize that production and throw a lot of units at you fast. He's a really fun Terran that way. Now, if you've been watching the GSL or if you've just been kind of keeping up on trends, one of the developments that's happened in the Protoss versus Terran matchup is a Nexus First. Sure, we've been doing Nexus First since the beta, but why not defend it with actually photon cannons, giving ourselves access to that early forge and allowing us to do our upgrades without chrono boosting them so we can spend all our chrono boost on probes and really take advantage of some pretty powerful economy early on. So we do see the standard Nexus First 16 supply. I like to build an extra probe pylon inside the main as per usual. Then we do forge. Okay, that's where it diverts just a little bit, and we actually go up here and drop that pylon as well at the front of the base. Now we actually don't end up scouting the Terran in this situation just because our build's fixed. There's nothing I would scout and see him doing that would change things. More often than not, I would lose the probe to a Marine, or I would get walled out and I just wouldn't see anything. But also we want these probes as early as possible so we can hit our markers as fast as possible. Cannons, forges, gateways, all those things are very expensive earlier on because of the lack of probes saturating minerals. So the more probes we have on those minerals, the faster we can do it. As we can see, after that pylon is up though, or excuse me, that cannon, it is important to get out on the map because we do want to have an idea of where our opponent is, but also what's coming. If this probe were to die to 5-6 Marines right now and 10 SCVs, I would know that there's desperate times ahead for me. But as it is, it just dies to 3 Marines. And I'm like, okay, that's pretty standard stuff, right? Nothing normal, or nothing abnormal, rather. When in fact, it's anything but. He's actually going to go ahead and go 2 racks. That was developed before he scouted what I was doing, but still dangerous. So I'm going to send a second probe out. Very important. The number of cannons you make is not fixed. You don't just always make 4 cannons or something like that. You certainly don't make 1, but at the very least you make 2. Okay, that's extremely important. You'll also notice I didn't build 2 cannons right away. And that's because 1 cannon can hold off any kind of thing that you would face up until that time. Unless the Terran had proxied 3 barracks and did something that I'm not even sure is physically possible, 1 cannon can hold off the 3 or 4 Marines that are possible of coming at that time. We build the second cannon a little bit later, so this is completed. We count to like 15, and then we build the second cannon. Obviously, that's like super specific, but that's for my nerds out there that are super specific, so hopefully that helped you. But anyways, the second probe goes out. Really important that you grab the tower because the tower is, of course, going to be the truth teller for you, or at least the mostly truth teller for you. Very clever Terrans will send like 2 Marines out ahead of the pack, dislodge the probe, and then send whatever else is behind it. But oftentimes you're going to face an opponent that shows you everything because they don't either A, they don't count on you being on the tower, or B, they don't care. They're coming after you. Meanwhile, back at home, let's talk about the build itself. You want to build a forge, the cannon. We're still building probes, constantly building probes. Then we drop the gateway, the gas, and then the cybernetics core. And you'll notice it's just a little bit off from what we normally would be doing, right? About a minute and a half later in all counts. That's of course okay because what we're doing is we're getting a Nexus a good 5 minutes ahead of time, earlier than we normally would if we did a 1-gate expand. So that gives us access to additional chrono boost. We're building probes twice as fast, etc. So this is actually our advantage. That's what we're going to do. Now it's really important to note here too, you can just do normal Nexus First, right? We've been seeing that since the beta. Why do we build cannons? Well, it's been kind of found out that if you do a Nexus First, there's a certain amount of builds that you're just going to fall, it's almost like a coin flip. There's a certain amount of builds you're going to face that they just outright are going to kill you because, again, you don't actually have any infrastructure at all. A really good example would be 2 Rex Marine SCV. That's very hard for you to hold off with the Nexus First because at most you'll have something like 2 or 3 stalkers and 2 or 3 zealots or something of that nature. And if they get a couple of bunkers down, you're going to lose that base. Or if you get surrounded or get just hit too much by the Marines, you're going to lose that base and potentially the game. So that's why people have started to say, I wonder if I can add a couple of cannons. But the added advantage of that, too, is once we hit 100 gas, we're actually having access to really fast upgrades. And if we start them as early as this, we don't actually have to spin Chrono Boost on it. So Protoss have found, if I'm not Chrono Boosting upgrades and I'm safe from any kind of early cheese, I guess I can kind of just build a bajillion probes. And that's pretty powerful, we come to find. So as this is, he's like a half-clever Terran. He dislodges me from the tower, and all I saw was 6 Marines. I don't see this being pulled out from behind it, but I got the idea. I'm going to go ahead and drop a 3rd cannon here fairly soon, I believe. Nope, actually, I think it's just the 2 for now. But you'll notice my probe's circled around. Doesn't need to come back home, because if it came back home, I'd be sealed inside. There's that 3rd cannon. And the probe is going out to scout, but aha, you're coming after me, so I instantly pull my probes. In fact, I'm playing this super safe. Here comes the probes from the main. Not all of them, mind you. And they don't actually have to attack, they just have to take up space. They have to act as like kind of a buffer between the Marines and the cannons. Because if they start shooting the probes, then there's the potential for these Marines, which don't actually affect the economy of the Terran, to kill probes while they die, which does affect my economy. So I just actually moved out there, kind of took up space, and then came back home, realizing that I just need to get back to mining. Now, also, I noticed he kind of focused down this pylon, so rather than have a weird scenario where I'm like 10,000 miles ahead, but he kills the pylon and then I lose the game, let's just go ahead and double up on those pylons. Meanwhile, back at home, again, Chrono Boost got a little bit lax because I wasn't sure if how all-in I was getting. But now it's just probes. Watch that production tab. It should be probes all game long, man. Just probes, 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 probes. In fact, I need to do a little bit better job Chrono Boosting. But you'll notice that probe that circled around does die right here, but it sees that he's just now expanding, and I'm like, aha! That SCV loss that you suffered earlier really puts you behind. And I'm also, let's see, nope, I don't actually see this. But I push out with my Stalker just because I know that he's on Marine Tech. And I'm just going to be the thorough Protoss that I am, and I scout up here, and I find myself facing an extremely fast 3rd Command Center, which gets completely exploited this time because, look, Warp Gate is about to finish. He just has Marines out. He's leaving this Command Center because he really wants it to finish, but this pylon right here that I had built earlier, which is so fantastic, is why not only does he have to cancel it, but he's probably going to lose some Marines for his trouble as well. So this is a big advantage for a Protoss player, becoming a huge advantage for a Protoss player. The fact that he canceled the 3rd and he lost Marines in the meantime means that, as you can see here, he's underdeveloped, he's in disarray, and he's losing in all categories, by tech, but also by economy. So as we can see here, a little bit of light pressure there. Probably, you know, obviously, when we look at it now, it looks pretty silly. Going to go ahead and grab those towers. He actually had the towers the entire time, so good vision for him. But now he's in the dark. Look at the map. He only sees his base, which means you're going to get more scans out of your opponent. You're going to get more SCVs going out trying to scout, and a lot of times you're going to get that Terran player making choices they otherwise wouldn't if they had better information. So that's why we, as the Protoss players, can take advantage of that. We're going to go ahead and take a faster 3rd than normal. This game was slowed down a little bit by the all-in, but that's still a pretty fast 3rd. And now we are spinning Chrono Boost on our forges to go ahead and get those upgrades going much, much faster. Meanwhile, what kind of tech do we want to go with this? Obviously, Double Forge is the bread and butter. I go Robo, but I also go Twilight Council, which allows me to blink into his base, because I did go blink first. But Colossus could be okay. I end up going Templar. I find that a lot of Terrans do not like to open up Ghost first. They, in fact, will typically open up with something more like Vikings, just kind of carte blanche / blind. Which means if you go Colossus into that, you're kind of running into their counter. So why not just go Templar first and force them to make those Ghosts, which are a lot more resource intensive on the Terran player, which means we can weather them down just in a resource value war. But he actually pushes out with a surprisingly larger forge than I expected. You'll notice that the supplies are not that far different. One thing I do have going for me is my 2/2 upgrades versus just his 1 attack. And 1 armor is a figment of his imagination for right now. So he's going to go ahead and settle down, try to buy himself time. Again, with the Observer, I'm granting myself vision of him. And again, we've had the lead from the beginning. I'm up almost 20 Harvesters. Supply-wise, I'm up again about those 20 Harvesters. Upgrade advantage is huge. I have a good concave here. And he had to bring SCVs because he's feeling desperate. That faster 3rd, but also the Nexus first makes the Terran feel like they have to do pretty desperate stuff to get back in this game. And this is a repeating theme that has occurred all game long. And it was almost earned just by the sheer value of our opening build orders, right? So we talked about that Nexus first and why we go cannons and how it gives us access to faster upgrades. But you can see I'm now circling back to Colossus. I do have access to Templar, and I believe I actually utilize that. Yep, there they are. And they do have Storm available to them. And this is a scenario that's a dream snare for the Protoss player. I've got good vision. I stopped him from taking a third. My observer's letting me know that he's just kind of rallying out to the middle of the map. The second I see this, which is SCVs, I'm like, oh, okay. I just have to survive. So I pull back. I'm going to get a pretty okay concave over there. Actually, it's very minimal effort to control what he's doing. But just because of the upgrades and because of the tech advantage, this battle's not even close. You'll notice I'm now 100 supply ahead, whereas before that, it was like 40 or 50. So obviously, I kind of spanked that down. So I'm not going to try to make this sound like the most complicated thing in the world, because quite frankly, it isn't. It's a very strong build. It's weak against gas openings, so if they get a Reaper up in your base and they kill a bunch of probes, you can be in trouble that way. Sometimes proxy Marauders are difficult to hold off just because they do a much better job of killing cannons, and if you only have like 2 cannons because you didn't really scout them or figure out what's going on, then oftentimes that can be a really big trouble for you. But if you're facing the more standard opening from Terran players, which is a gasless 1-Rax expand or some variation of that, you are advantaged. You're in a fantastic position, and as long as you chrono boost your probes and start your upgrades early and often, you're going to have the economic, perhaps the upgrade advantage as well. And those are very powerful tools for us as Protoss players. So this is something that I wouldn't recommend you do every game, just because, again, it does have its weaknesses. But if a player is going up against me in a tournament, they now have to say to themselves, well, gosh, he's capable of doing Nexus first, so do I mix in double Rax openings? Do I go gas? It starts to put them in a weird place where they're questioning their build orders. Terran players are typically the kind of guys that like to do 1 or 2 different kinds of builds, but when we start kind of controlling the metagame and doing things like this, we force them into a scenario where they're outside their comfort zone. They're now having to do a lot more thinking than they'd like to be doing, and that favors us as the Protoss players. So hopefully this was something you guys found to be advantageous for you. I had a lot of fun talking about it. Do check out my other videos at evilgeniuses.net. I just talk about Protoss play, strategies, defending cheese, builds, all that good stuff. Hopefully it's stuff that you guys find interesting and educational. In other ways, I will see you guys later.